Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for our Enabling Canadian Innovation SOLIDWORKS 2021 launch event. And welcome to this breakout session where we will be looking at large assembly performance improvements in SOLIDWORKS 2021. So my name is Mike. I'm a SOLIDWORKS and 3D Experience account manager here with CAD Micro. My passion lies within empowering Canadian companies to leverage innovative Industry 4.0 technology to help them design their best products, manufacture more efficiently, and cut down on costs as much as possible. Taking us through the technical part of our presentation today is our Director of Technology for Western Canada, Angus Hudson. Based in our Vancouver, BC office, Angus has 11 years of SOLIDWORKS experience, and he comes to us with a background in medical device development and manufacturing. Angus enjoys working closely with our customers to get to the root of their business needs and come up with the best solution to their design challenges, and enabling them to create their best designs without being held up by software limitations. Our goal today is to walk you through how to maximize your performance in working with large assemblies in SOLIDWORKS. So to start, we're going to go through the history of some of the improvements over recent years and highlight some of these changes. We are then going to take a look at improvements in SOLIDWORKS 2021 and show you how you can leverage these improvements to improve your day-to-day workflow. Next, we're going to dive into drawing performance improvements in SOLIDWORKS 2021. And finally, Angus is going to take us through his top 10 tips and tricks so you can get the best out of your SOLIDWORKS when working with large assemblies. I'm sure everyone will be burning with questions, so we will leave the last few minutes to go through a Q&A session. So that is enough talking for me, but before we get started with the technical part of the presentation, we do have a poll question that we wanted to ask you guys just so we can get a better feel for our audience today. Oh, did we, okay, perfect. So Angus, that's great. It looks like we have a majority of mechanical engineers in here, which is great, and a few others, some engineering managers and project engineers there. So, I think you guys will find a lot of value in today's session. So Angus, without further ado, I'm going to pass it over to you to get started.
Thank you, Mike. Appreciate that. I'm going to go ahead and take my webcam off here so that I'm not distracting anybody with that. But first off, let's start talking about the recent highlights in large assembly performance. And I wanted to start with this because when I started using SOLIDWORKS, what is now quite a while ago, at the time it had a bit of a reputation. And the reputation was that it wasn't the best at large assemblies. It was easy to use, but it wasn't the best when it came to large assemblies. I really believe that in the past 3 or 4 years, SOLIDWORKS has challenged this preconception. And every year they do more and more, and they release bigger and better enhancements that challenge that preconception. And in my opinion now, SOLIDWORKS is not just the easiest to use CAD software, but it also stands toe-to-toe with any of its competitors when it comes to large assembly performance. So let's take a look at some of the things that have taken us to this point. The first thing that we're going to talk about is the GPU-based rendering. And so this is something that came out 2 years ago. And the idea of this was that SOLIDWORKS, when it was originally written, the hardware was completely different than it is today. SOLIDWORKS first came out in 1995. GPUs were not super powerful. The graphics cards of the day were not, anything to write home about in 2020. But when we look at what we have today with the Quadro cards and the new Quadro cards that are coming out, that's a ton of power. And so SOLIDWORKS shifted all of the view commands from your CPU over to the graphics card. And that has made a dramatic performance gain in the actual rendering performance of SOLIDWORKS. So let's take a look at what I mean here. So first off, looking in SOLIDWORKS 2018, you can see here that we have a very large assembly. This is the Canada, France, Hawaii telescope. Pretty big item. And as you can see, there's quite a bit of detail, but we're working in large assembly mode. And what that means is that we actually lose some of the detail, we lose some of the shadows, things don't look as good. And as we move around, things will disappear. We get great performance while we're moving, however. Turning large assembly mode off now, you can see that that performance quickly disappears. That the detail comes back, we get great performance with the detail, but the actual movement is very slow. This is now a command that said set large assembly mode turned off. And it's almost exactly the same as working in SOLIDWORKS 2018 with large assembly mode on. And that is all because those pan, rotate, and zoom commands are all being passed instead of going through your central process, lightweight to resolved, hard. And this is just SOLIDWORKS making sure that they're keeping up better with the hardware and the trends and taking full advantage of that investment that you're making in your graphics hardware. And so here you can see them side by side. With SOLIDWORKS 2019, we don't have to sacrifice speed in order to have detail. And that's one of the big differences that we saw with the GPU-based render pipeline. Another really powerful thing that we've seen here is large design review edit mode. Large design review has been around for a couple of years, and it was a great way of going in and taking a look at large assemblies really quickly, but it didn't exactly give you the ability to do anything with the assemblies. And so that's where large design review edit mode came in. It was first brought in 2 years ago, and it was enhanced last year. And the idea is that you're able to work with the different components, the mates, configurations, you can save changes, and you even have the ability to create and edit component patterns. So let's go and take a look at an example of large design review edit mode. The first thing to note here is that we have to select it from the home screen when we're opening. As you can see, this very large first floor drawing is going to open up for us right away. Loads lightning fast. We're still able to see the components in the feature tree. We still get dynamic highlighting as we select them. So that's working out great. We can even measure this if we want to. And this is just the regular large design review. Not a lot of people were using it or knew about it, but so make sure you do. You can still take section views, do all of those sorts of things, and work with your model as you would need to review it. If there's something you want to hide, you can go ahead and hide it. No problem. When you right click on the top level, you have the ability to say edit assembly, and that's what we're going to do here. If you take a look at the feature tree, we now have access to our planes. We have some unconsumed sketches. We can see the mates. This is what's come in, and everything that we can see is something that we can work with and edit. So we're going to make sure that we unhide one of these sketches, and coming in and taking a look, we don't like necessarily having both of these pumps here. No problem. We can go ahead and delete them. Easy as that. We're still working in this highly expedited assembly. Things are working much faster, but we're still able to go ahead. We can insert a new component. We can go ahead and use the standard quick access toolbar mating, or the in-context toolbar mating that we're used to, that we know and love, that we've gotten so used to with SOLIDWORKS. And we're even going to do an insert component here, and magnetic mates are fully supported in large design review edit mode, just like we're going to see here as we bring the condenser in. In the situation where we have these two pumps, maybe we want to switch one of them to a different configuration. No problem. With LDR edit mode, we can 100% do that. And when we're done working with this, perhaps we want to bring back those components that we hid in the regular large design review mode. We have the ability to do that in the edit mode as well. And at the end of this, once we've finished everything that we're doing, it would be useless if we couldn't save it. And so that's one of the great things about this, is we still have the ability to save this so that the next time it's opened, resolved, or in large design review edit mode, we're still going to be able to see this and have access to all of the changes that we've made here. Something that got me very excited about last year's What's New was the ability to manage external references more. We're going to talk a lot about external references when we get to the tips and tricks section. So I don't want to give away too much of the pizzazz right away, but it's important to know that SOLIDWORKS 2020 gave us the ability to manage envelopes and external references so that we could collaborate better and not necessarily have to work in the top-down design. External references, just a bit of a spoiler alert here, they're not the best for large assembly performance. They are a bit of a trade-off. And so with SOLIDWORKS 2020, we had the ability to go into our system options under external references and allow or disallow with just a checkbox the creation of external references to the model. This is great. This gives us the ability on a corporate level to push this out and say our design practice is no external references if that's what we want to do. If we want to have top-down design happening, then we have the ability to say whether we want it to be any component that can be an external reference, or whether we need to take a full advantage of the envelope performance in SOLIDWORKS. We can say whether it can be in the context of the top level or only within that same subassembly. So this gives us granular control over our external references. taking a look at the envelopes, top-down design is fantastic, but sometimes working in the top level assembly is a little bit slow. It's the part of your assembly that has everything in it. So that's when we want to have the ability to reference things in the sub-assemblies. That's where we use the envelope publisher. We take entities that we want to reference in one subassembly, and then we select a different subassembly that we want to copy them over to. We're creating the envelope in that subassembly. This means we don't have to have data reuse where we have something happening in multiple subassemblies. We don't have to have things not making sense in which subassemblies we're putting them in. And it means we don't, again, have to work in that top level assembly. As you can see, when we open up this subassembly, the envelope appears just as this shaded in region, but we're still able to select it and use it to create this reference for this mate here. This is great because this means that that mate has an external reference to the model, which is being created, but we haven't had to, again, work in that top level or copy data over from another subassembly in a different way. What's also great about this is that the envelope is going to stay up to date. So if that component changes, that reference will force the subassembly that we were just mating in, it'll force that one to update as well. So this is very powerful, very handy. I definitely recommend taking advantage of envelopes so that you aren't working in your top level all the time. We also had detailing mode come in, and this is more talking about large assembly performance when we're working with drawings. Because as you know, when you load a drawing with a ton of model data in it, it can be a little bit slow. It doesn't always have the best performance. And so SOLIDWORKS brought in detailing mode, and this is sort of like a large design review edit mode, but for drawings. We're able to quickly load the drawings because we are not loading the model data, but we can still work with the drawings in an interesting way. So once again, you want to make sure that you're opening your design with that specific mode selected. So we want to make sure that we're selecting detailing mode. From there, the drawing is going to load lightning fast. As you're going to see here, as well as we switch between the different sheets, that is also going to happen very quickly. And this is because only a very small amount of the data from the model is actually being loaded. Primarily, this is just loading graphical data into our SOLIDWORKS session. If we want to go ahead and update this balloon, that's no problem. We can throw it on the existing magnetic line. All of that works. We can still use our design library to drag in a note. And for this note that we have here, maybe we want to change that around. We want to change some of the formatting, add some numbers, some boldness. We can do all of that, and we can even drag that back into our design library. In this situation, we have a drawing that's maybe a little bit too crowded. And so what we can do here is we can actually rearrange the drawing completely. We can go ahead and we can even cut that view out and put that onto a new sheet, which we'll just place beside our elevation view. This is huge. This is without loading any model data. We have the ability to completely rearrange our document package. In the situation we have here, we actually want to add another balloon and have it be referencing our bill of materials. No problem. That works just the same way it would as though we were working in a fully resolved drawing. If we want to add some dimensions, this is where one of the most significant limitations comes in. We can still add dimensions, no problem, using the standard Smart Dimension tool, but the limitation is we can't use the model items command. You can actually see that it's grayed out on the command manager. Anything grayed out on the command manager is not able to be used. And the reason for this is usually because they require the full model data in order to work, in order to have that intelligence. But we still have access to things like the format painter, the dimension palette, and we even have the ability to say, I've just created a revision of the drawing. So let's go ahead and create a revision cloud so it's clear what I've changed. We can do all of that right here. When we go to save the drawing, we have the ability to say whether we want to save it resolved, so that it takes a little longer to save now, but it opens quickly next time, or whether we want to resolve it later on and have it take a little longer to open. The other big thing is if you're working in a non-PDM environment, then you're probably manually still creating your PDF documents. With SOLIDWORKS detailing mode, you can go in and save your PDF directly from within detailing mode. So you can open that drawing faster and get your PDF out faster without waiting for all of your model data to load, which you don't need. So that's a great tool there. Again, at CAD Micro, we recommend PDM every day of the week. It's a great tool. If you want to learn more about it, talk to us because we love talking about it and we can definitely figure out if it's the right solution for you. But if you don't have it and you're still creating PDFs manually, this is a great tool to use. Okay, that is some of the recent enhancements that we've had. Mike, did you have any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, well, first of all, obviously, great job there. Lots of information there. Appreciate you going through that. Even for a non-SOLIDWORKS user like myself, it's clear to see and understand how far we've come over the past few years. One thing that really caught my attention there is, the switch from the CPU to the GPU base, which just goes to show that, SOLIDWORKS is listening to, the user community and making improvements based on what they want to see. So that's great. So before we head into the next section of our presentation here, we did have another poll question that we wanted to ask just to get a better feel for what version of SOLIDWORKS our audience is currently using right now.
Mike, while everyone's answering, I think that's a great opportunity to mention that, so many of the enhancements we're seeing, especially this year, have come as just direct requests of the user community, people submitting requests for enhancements. And that's one way is, our customers and our partners that you guys can all work with us is if you have an idea for an enhancement, let us know because we're happy to submit it to SOLIDWORKS on your behalf and try to get that pushed through into the next version, try to make the software the way you want it to be running.
Definitely, great point. So it looks like here, based on the results, we have majority of users using SOLIDWORKS 2020, and the next would be 2019. So kind of right in that wheelhouse of what we want to talk about, and especially kind of moving into SOLIDWORKS 2021 improvements. It's a perfect segue. So again, I'll hand it off to you to take it to the next step.
Perfect. Great to see so many of you have upgraded to 2020. 2021 brings in some things that I'm pretty excited about, to be honest. As I mentioned, there were a lot of user requested enhancements to large assembly performance that I think have been in the pipeline for a couple of years, but R&D finally perfected them this year. So let's jump right in and take a look at some of the enhancements. Big one here, better open times. That is just music to my ears that in SOLIDWORKS 2021, things are going to open faster. The bigger your assembly, the more of a performance gain you're going to see. They've just improved the way that things get opened, the way that the software is running in the background, and it's great to see. So let's take a look at an example here. We have a 2200 component assembly here from Square Robot. We're going to be opening it in lightweight mode, but just take a look at how quickly we get that open performance. It's great that they brought this ability for us to see what's opening in a couple of years ago, because now we can really see just how quickly it's loading back those components. As you can see, this file is going to open in about 21 seconds, which for 2200 components is fantastic. I couldn't be more thrilled with that performance. And I think this is something that we can really take advantage of moving forward. And how, just anecdotally a little bit here, I've been using SOLIDWORKS 2021 now for a couple months, and I've done some side-by-side comparisons, and it is noticeable. So definitely the bigger assemblies, I try to work with them only in SOLIDWORKS 2021 now because I can open them so much faster. As you saw there, we opened that assembly up in lightweight mode. And lightweight mode is a great tool. It doesn't load, it only loads a subset of your model data for your sub-assemblies and things like that. So it's a great tool to make sure that you're getting the best performance possible. So if you're not using lightweight mode, I highly recommend taking advantage of it. But in SOLIDWORKS 2020 and previous, with lightweight mode, you had to, if you wanted to edit the model, you had to right click, you had to find the command that said set lightweight to resolved, and you had to then wait for it to resolve your components. With SOLIDWORKS 2021, this is all happening in the background as you expand the feature tree. Let's take a look at what I mean. So again, we opened this all in lightweight, but as you can see, just as soon as we click to expand the feature tree of any of our sub-assemblies, everything about it is going to become fully resolved. And it does it quickly because again, it's taking advantage of that faster loading performance. So this is a great tool for as you're working that you can just, you don't have to think about it too hard. You don't have to right click and find something. You just work as you normally would, and SOLIDWORKS takes care of the rest. And the other great thing about this is that if you need to set it back to lightweight, you still have the ability to do that. We still have the ability to go in, right click, and say set resolve to lightweight, and it's going to do all of that for you. But it gives you granular control over how things are getting loaded. As you can see there, we were taking a look at the configurations there. Just like how we have faster loading performance on lightweight, we also have faster load times when switching between configurations. If you have pretty bulky configurations, you know that this can sometimes take a little while. It's a situation where SOLIDWORKS might hang for a couple of seconds. With SOLIDWORKS 2021, they've put a real effort into making sure that this happens much faster. So, it's a great practice to have a hardware and a no hardware configuration so that you can just reduce the detail really quickly. With SOLIDWORKS 2021, switching between those two happens really seamlessly. Another big thing here is circular references. We talk about how external references are not great for large assembly performance. They might slow things down depending on how many you have and how large your assembly is. Well, one specific type of external reference, called a circular reference, is the absolute worst thing for large assembly performance. This is going to come in any time that you're doing a rebuild. SOLIDWORKS has ambiguity because two things are referencing each other for their definition. Anytime SOLIDWORKS has ambiguity, SOLIDWORKS slows down. That's just, it's like a driver on the road. There's a bit of ambiguity. The snow's coming down. They can't see exactly what's going on. They just pump the brakes. They slow right down. That's what SOLIDWORKS is going to be doing with your performance if you have circular references. So in SOLIDWORKS 2021, if we go to our performance evaluation tool, great tool, we're going to talk about it later. We go to performance evaluation and we look at our rebuild performance section. If our assembly has circular references, a warning is going to pop up here. So this is great. We now get a warning that we have circular references. If we expand on that, we show these files, we're going to see exactly which features are referencing exactly which entities and where that circular reference is happening. If this is what's going on, I highly recommend using descriptive feature names and descriptive part names if you want to, so that it's clear here. But we're going to just go ahead and isolate the components that this was happening with. And so we can see the circular reference here really quickly. Editing this whole wizard feature, going into the positions, and then selecting to show the relations, you can see the external concentric references. They're external because they have that little arrow. So we've got those external references right there. Normally that would be fine. Okay, that in itself isn't any cause for concern. The time when it becomes cause for concern is when we look at the other whole wizard positions and we can see that they also have a concentric relation that's being defined by those holes. This is something that can easily happen as you're doing top-down design, and it's definitely an issue. Luckily, now that we can find it really easily and see that it's happening, the resolution is exceptionally fast. All we have to do is redefine the positions of those holes using some good old-fashioned dimensioning or constraining. That's it. Define it so that it's no longer circular and you're good to go. That's all you have to do. You don't have to right click and find something. You just read configurations. And I have been very vocal in how much I've loved the defeature command, especially since the silhouette defeature option came in a couple of years ago. And the reason for this is because it allows you to dramatically reduce the weight, the performance weight of your assembly simply by reducing the amount of detail. It's also a great way to protect your IP if you would like to. Well, now when we do a silhouette defeature, we have the ability to create a new configuration, work as you normally would in detailed defeatured configuration, and we have a much more easy, simple way for us to access that within our model. Let's take a look at what I mean. Here we have, this is a pretty complex subassembly. We have a lot of fasteners, a lot of holes, a lot of faces. That roller in the bottom left there is looking pretty complicated. We maybe don't need this much detail when we're working in our top level assembly. So for that, we're going to create a low detail version using the silhouette defeature command. So you just select defeature and you select the silhouette option. All we have to do then is we select the different bodies that we're interested in. So here, we're going to start to select some bodies. We're going to select a simplification type, and we'll bring those over into our defeatured configuration. As you can see there on the right-hand side, we get a preview. That preview is going to stay completely up to date. So as we rotate our assembly around, that view will rotate with it. It'll zoom with it, but we can see what it is that we're building up. This makes it really simple for us to go in and just start to create that low detail version, because we can see exactly what we're going to be working with. So piece by piece, we're going to add the different segments that we're interested in, using the different outline types here. And I'm going to talk more about this later on in the tips and tricks section, because unless you hadn't guessed so far, I get pretty excited by the defeature command. I think it's pretty great. One situation where the defeature is not necessarily what you want to do, though, is where you have mounting points. Where you're going to be mounting to the rest of your assembly, you probably want to just use the copy geometry. And luckily with the defeature command and silhouette defeature, you have the ability to say, just copy the geometry. Just give me the exact replication so that I can still do this. And here's what's new in SOLIDWORKS 2021. We now have the ability to say right off the bat, don't create this as a new document, don't store those settings, create it as a new configuration for me. When we do this, SOLIDWORKS is going to store this as a child configuration of whatever configuration you've created this in. So you can flip between the two really, really quickly, really easily. And that actually adds a lot of intelligence, just like how we get our flat pattern views and those as a configuration when we're working with sheet metal. This defeature command works much the same way. So let's take a look at what I'm talking about. When we get into our top level assembly, this is where we would use our defeatured model. We don't need all of this detail to be sitting in that roller model, in that brush. And so we can right click and we can say use defeatured. As easy as that. SOLIDWORKS understands exactly what that means. We don't have to go in and select the correct configuration out of 30. We just say use defeatured. And SOLIDWORKS goes ahead and uses the defeatured model, which is exactly what we want in something like this top level assembly. We don't need all of those graphics triangles. We just need a simple outline representation of what we're looking at. Perhaps we're doing it to improve our large assembly performance. Perhaps it's because we want to send this off to someone and we don't want them to know exactly what that component is. Both of those situations work perfectly with the new defeature command. Let's talk about the model display. So the GPU-based rendering pipeline that I was talking about earlier, that Mike mentioned, this has gotten a nice enhancement in SOLIDWORKS 2021 as well. And there's been some significant improvements for when we're working in hidden lines removed, when we're working in large assemblies. So by default, that performance wasn't necessarily turned on in previous years of SOLIDWORKS. It is now. So if you go to your settings and performance, you're going to see enhanced graphics performance is turned on by default now. I recommend leaving it there. Now we're going to compare the performance with this turned on and turned off, just so that you can see. So we have a macro here that's going to basically spin our mouse 500 times. On the right, performance mode is disabled. On the left, performance mode is enabled. As you can see here, we're able to complete those 500 turns in just about 8 seconds with 63 frames per second when we're working with performance mode on. That's about a 20 times improvement over having the performance mode disabled. So that's pretty compelling evidence for why we should leave this turned on. Another reason to keep it turned on is that we have improved rendering of silhouette edges when we're in hidden lines removed, hidden lines visible. And here we're gonna do that same thing again. And you can see that those silhouette edges are causing a lot of performance strain. Here it's just about 4.7 seconds, 106.5 frames per second versus 170 seconds. That's a 36 times improvement just from having that one checkbox ticked. So I definitely recommend turning that on. If you are still wondering about this, definitely post in the comments or in the question window, or reach out to us later, because yeah, there's no reason I can see for you not to be using performance mode. 2021 has also introduced occlusion-based culling. So what that means is that if something is not visible in the view, it doesn't get fully rendered. And so here it's been paused. You can see what it looks like. This is what it would have looked like before when we were on the other side. We're going to unpause it. And now everything comes into focus, but the back side, everything you can't see, that would now not be fully rendering. This will give you huge gains in large assemblies because you only use your graphics card where you need it. Okay, so this was, of course, just a development build to show what was happening. But as you can see there, this is a great tool that SOLIDWORKS has now implemented to improve performance by only working where it has to. Okay, so that brings us to the end of the current enhancements in SOLIDWORKS 2021 to large assembly performance.
Yeah, great job, Angus. Thanks for again going through that. Being able to save the silhouette defeatured model as configuration reminds me of the 2018 release where we switched to detail configuration in order to maximize large assembly performance. So it's great to see it come full circle in 2021 with an easy way to generate the low detail configurations and making it easy to improve large assembly performance as needed. So yeah, that's great to see, and you really did a great job of demonstrating that. So I guess from that perspective, let's pass it over again to you to go through our third section here.
Thanks, Mike. Appreciate it. Yeah, so let's go through our third section. As Mike said, the drawing performance in SOLIDWORKS 2021. We have seen some nice enhancements to this as well. One of the big ones right here, the GPU-based drawing rendering. So that same GPU pipeline that we saw, that we talked about earlier, that we saw improved this year in 2021 for the part and assembly modes, is now happening in our drawing. Those view commands in our drawings are now lightweight. We also have faster rather than the CPU. So here we're going to see the performance side by side. We have SOLIDWORKS 2020 on the left and SOLIDWORKS 2021 on the right. With 2020, you can see there's specifically a large amount of lag right when you start your pan command. With 2021, you can see that that does not exist. That has been completely gotten rid of with the new GPU pipeline. Same thing with zooming in, and performance while zoomed in is now significantly improved. No lag. Everything just sticks to your mouse. It's like the mouse has the screen on a string. It's great. But then with 2020, we can see there's a bit of lag as we're zooming. That's really inconvenient. That means that you often tend to overshoot. That it adds up, right? It's a couple moments, a fraction of a moment, a couple times a day. That really adds up, and it just doesn't feel like you're using a state-of-the-art software. With SOLIDWORKS 2021, you are getting that cutting edge. It's going to work perfectly. Same thing we can see here with an even more pronounced effect when we go into this much more busy drawing. Here, with 2020, we're definitely getting a little bit of laggy performance. With 2021, nothing. It all works seamlessly. And that is exactly what we're getting with that GPU-based render pipeline for those view commands in SOLIDWORKS 2021. Detailing mode has also received a number of enhancements. And so now it's easier to edit existing dimensions, we can create common view types, and we can work with annotations all while maintaining that same high level of drawing performance. So again, I can't say this enough, make sure that you're going in and using the more advanced open here so that you can actually select the detailing mode. And then when you come in and you do your open, we can see again that our drawing loads exceptionally quickly. As we rotate around, we switch pages, we're still going to have that highly advanced GPU-based performance, making sure things happen really quickly. Switching over between sheets, we're going to go ahead now and actually make a slight edit, okay? So we have our notes here, and previously we could bring in new annotations and like a note, and we could change the notes. But now we have the ability to change notes that were already existing in the drawing. So here, making a switch to make this be your bomb to your cut list, we want to maybe delete a couple lines. We can do that with existing annotations now in SOLIDWORKS 2021. We have this fairly long view that we've broken on the bottom, but we haven't broken on the top. Well, now in SOLIDWORKS 2021's detailing mode, we have the ability to create broken views just like we do in non-detailing mode. Really quick, really easy. You can see that it performs exactly as you would expect it to, and it performs very quickly too, no lag whatsoever. We still have the full ability to select the different style of break line as we would like to. Another thing here is we have some great ordinate dimensioning going on, and we now have the ability to add to these ordinate dimensions in detailing mode much faster. So we can go ahead and select add to ordinate and then add as many different items as we would like to. Coming down to the bottom here, this is a broken view that we're going to create a detailed view of all within detailing mode. This is without loading any model data whatsoever. You can see it's still going to load it as though it's a non-broken view. We're going to get the detail scale right there, and we can even create a whole call out in detailing mode now. And we still have all of that whole data, even though, again, not loading any model data. Our dimensions that we create are going to recognize that they're being part of a broken view. If we come in here and we want to say change the tolerance and the precision on this dimension, we have the ability to do that for the existing dimensions now. We have the full, all the properties in the property panel are available now for dimensions. So for this one here, where we've dimensioned to the minor edge of the hole, the minimum distance, we can actually go ahead and change on our leaders tab so that we're dimensioning to the center of the arc. Really simple, really easy, but all because we have everything available to us. That's one of the things about SOLIDWORKS detailing mode. I don't know how they've done it. As far as I'm concerned, it's magic. They've given us the ability to do so many things now without loading model data. It's very impressive. It's definitely worth your time to use it, because once you get your drawings started and you get those views in place, you can, ignore the model data and just come in and use detailing mode and everything will work great.
So Angus, that's great. One thing I'm noticing actually is that SOLIDWORKS with these improvements, they're really making it worthwhile for its customers to invest in high-end graphics hardware, just to ensure that users are getting the most out of that investment and making sure that the graphics card is being used as much as possible.
With SOLIDWORKS, yeah, that's exactly right, Mike.
Awesome. So yeah, great job going through that. So we're just going to head into our last section here for the tips and tricks. Before we do, we have one last poll question here for our audience. So we're just going to get that up there for you guys. All right, so just looking at the results here, looks like the majority, well, it's pretty close actually, but we have most people with some minor slowdowns, but nothing major. We have some that are saying it takes a while to load, and they're definitely slow in no mode or settings seem to help. So a few different, responses across the board here, but I think that leads us perfectly into you taking us through your top 10 tips and tricks for large assembly performance improvements.
Absolutely. I mean, it's very interesting to see such a widespread of different effects that people are experiencing with their large assemblies. And I think a lot of these tips will probably help. If you're already doing all of these, then we can talk further. But these are the low-hanging fruit of SOLIDWORKS large assembly performance. These top 10, these will pretty much benefit any user who's using large assemblies if they have, if any experiencing any slowdown whatsoever. These tips will help. So the first one, Mike, you touched on it. SOLIDWORKS is really, making it worthwhile to invest in that hardware, and that's great because SOLIDWORKS has long demanded that we buy very expensive graphics cards. Ask any engineering manager how much they spend on a graphics card, and they'll have some opinions for you. But when you come in with SOLIDWORKS, it is important to use it, and especially with the new enhancements in 2021, you really want to leverage that graphics card and get as much out of it. But with large assembly performance, the first thing I like to check when someone tells me they're experiencing slowdowns is I go into the SOLIDWORKS RX utility. So you guys can get to this. It's in your start menu. I always just go to the start menu and type RX, and it's going to pop up. Take a look at your diagnostics. See what some of the warnings are. See what it recommends. I have a bit of a weird system configuration, but if yours is more common, all of that is going to load right away, and it's going to tell you, if you're using the correct graphics driver. That's a big thing, is using the correct certified graphics driver is one of the biggest things I can recommend. Slowdowns, weird graphics performance, those all are usually the result of using a non-certified graphics driver for SOLIDWORKS, okay? So this is one of the situations where I come in, I check to make sure that the graphics driver is up to date. I check to make sure that we have enough RAM. Those are some of the big things that I'm checking. If people tell me that things are crashing a lot, I'll often go over to the problem capture tab, the reliability tab, and that's going to show me, how often SOLIDWORKS is crashing. It allows me to quantify that, and I can start to identify maybe some reasons why SOLIDWORKS is crashing. So this is a huge tool that I use, and you have access to it. You don't have to wait for me to get on the phone with you. You can go ahead and take a look at it right now and see what SOLIDWORKS says about your system performance. This is it giving you that in a nutshell. Next up is using performance evaluation. So this was something that came in a couple of years ago, and specifically I started to take note of it in SOLIDWORKS 2018. And because what it gives you is when you open it up, it tells you how long it is taking for everything to open. That's the details of the open document file. So you can identify, like right here, we're seeing yoke cylinder assembly takes 4.52 seconds, where everything else takes about half a second. That's maybe where I have to think about, why is my yoke cylinder assembly taking so long to open when nothing else is? It's also where we can take a look at the graphics triangles that we have in our assembly. Graphics triangles are one of the biggest drains on your system. They're one of the biggest causes of low large assembly performance. It's just how many graphics triangles have to be rendered at once. And so what I like to do with the graphics triangles is I actually go into my assembly visualization, which you can get to directly from performance evaluation, and I've copied over a screenshot of my whole macro spreader with the assembly visualization turned on. And this is sort of any time that you're doing a rebuild. You can see my yoke, it has a lot of complex curves. It makes sense that it would have quite a few graphics triangles. But let's take a look at something like that screw at the back or the handle that both have pretty high graphics triangles, even though there isn't necessarily that much going on. This is a situation where I would potentially come in and diagnose and really look at those components and start to reduce the number of graphics triangles on them to improve my assembly performance. And one of the ways that I can do that is by reducing my image quality. So image quality is something that gets set by your document templates. It's part of your document properties. So it's something that if you're the CAD admin or if you're in charge of your document templates, I highly recommend you go in and you ensure that it is set to about 10%. Okay, I know that that's a really long bar and it feels like maybe I'll put it in 50% because that's the halfway point. 10%, that's all you need. 10% is the sweet spot that allows you to get great performance and it still looks fine. You're not going to notice it. But again, you have to set this up in your document templates. I've already mentioned it once. I'm going to mention it again. Use silhouette defeature. Let's go through the demo that came out when silhouette defeature came out. We had it here in our telescope assembly. There's no reason to have that huge, highly complex model in our large assembly that we have at the top level there. So that's where we use the defeature command, and we can select the brand new at the time, but the now enhanced silhouette option. So again, you have the old defeature, which is great for removing internal details, protecting your IP. You want to use silhouette defeature. Then what I like to do personally is I like to do what happens here, where I select everything that I want to use as my, just my standard geometry. I don't want to remove any detail on it. And I start by saying Cosmo's coming down. They can't see exactly what's going on. So that's the first thing I do is I do the copy geometry. Then I start to look at my model and I say, okay, once I've done that, what are some similar shapes that we have going on? So we have a lot of cylindrical components. I'll often use the right-click, select identical components to make sure I'm getting everything. And I will select all the different circular components, bodies, whatever I've got going on, and I'll pick the cylindrical simplification method. Next, I'm going to look at these and I'm going to say, well, what are sort of the polygon type shapes, the things that I can get like a pretty simple graphical representation of? For that, we'll pick polygon outline, same thing. We're just going through and saying, you know, as I'm looking at this, what are the different shapes that I want to have happen? This is a fairly complex looking thing here. So for this, we'll pick the tight fit, and it might take some practice to get used to selecting the correct plane, because depending on which plane you select, that's going to affect where you're going to get the performance and the detail coming in. As you can see here though, we've gone from a very complex assembly on the left-hand side to a nice low detail version on the right-hand side, but it still looks similar. You know, you're going to know what you're looking at. You just know that you're looking at a low detail version of it. And again, with 2021, we can now save that low detail version as a configuration and easily switch to it in the top level. Another big thing you can do is working with sub-assemblies. As you can see in the screenshot on the right-hand side here, this is from this year's assembly from Square Robot. We have a ton of sub-assembly depth. Okay, and by that, you know, we go sub-assembly into a sub-assembly into a sub-assembly. I highly recommend doing that. Every time you can break something down into a sub-assembly, it means it's easier to work on just those components because you don't have to work in a large assembly for every sub-assembly. But it also means that SOLIDWORKS doesn't have to resolve nearly as much detail and calculate all the mates and things like that. The exception to that is if you select flexible as your sub-assembly type. Try to stay away from that. But you know, so long as you can work with rigid sub-assemblies, that is a great tool that you can use to make sure that your sub-assemblies are, you know, you have great depth, and so that you're not having to do too many calculations in your top level assembly. If you've already started in the top level and you're thinking to yourself, okay, but I would now like to make some sub-assemblies, all you have to do, select the things that you'd like to create a sub-assembly out of and just say form new sub-assembly. It's really easy. And it's a great tool that you can use in your top level to make things faster, and you will see performance gain as you create these new sub-assemblies. Really simple one, pretty straightforward, mate to your primary planes. Obviously, when you're designing, try to make sure things match up. So, you know, if you want something to be the right side of something, design using the right plane. You know, really simple like that. And then mate to your primary planes whenever you can. Okay, that's a huge thing because primary planes don't require nearly as much computational effort as faces do in SOLIDWORKS. So when you've mated to those primary planes, you're going to see better performance gain in your large assemblies. We've talked about external references. You know, they're a real trade-off. They're great for top-down design, and I really like them, but minimizing them is a great strategy. Something that I think is a little more attainable is starting with those top level assembly or those top level external references in the top down design mode, and then using the commands available to us to reduce our external references. So that's what we're going to do here. As you can see, we have a ton of external references. I have the parent-child relationships turned on here. And one of the reasons I do that is because I can select that little dot and I can choose to either break or lock that reference. Locking it means it doesn't have to do as much work to update. So definitely lock your external references so that they don't get changed, so they don't feel like they have to update. Locking external references is one of the ways to keep them in and still maintain your performance. You can also right-click on your top level and select external references to view every external reference in your model. This is a great tool to use because you can see which ones are locked, which ones are in context, which ones are broken, and you can actually work on all of that right from here. So in the case of our camera baffle here, we have a circular pattern that's being defined in context. We probably don't need that to be an external reference. That doesn't really make sense. And so in that situation, what we might want to do is replace that external reference. So here we just select break, and then we have the ability to go back in to SOLIDWORKS or to the assembly, to the part or the component, and change what that reference is. It's going to show up as broken with that little X there. And so that's where it's just telling you this doesn't have a reference anymore. Definitely make sure you do replace it because we don't want ambiguity in our models. But then you can go ahead and replace it, you can fix it, and that's a great tool to replace those external references so that you can maintain that large assembly performance. Big thing here, I know we all got really excited when SOLIDWORKS came out with their thread tool so that you could cut or extrude threads, but that's not great for large assembly performance. Those threads have a ton of graphics triangles. So where possible, use cosmetic threads. Taking advantage of patterns is huge, especially linear and circular component patterns in your assemblies. Rather than having a bunch of different instances, which you're going to mate all of them together, I highly recommend using patterns instead, because patterns are less computationally intensive than having to solve a bunch of mates. And finally, take advantage of the different performance modes. Make sure you're using the expanded open dialog or the actual open dialog itself that you can get to from the top left of the window. And make sure that you're selecting lightweight, large design review, detailing, all of those different modes. Really take advantage of them, especially with those new enhancements to lightweight mode in 2021. There's no reason not to be fully taking advantage of these. And if you have done all of these tips and tricks, if you go out today and you do all of these and you still experience poor large assembly performance, talk to us. That's where we can come in. We can specifically get to know your processes, your workflows, and we can find some tailored solutions to you. That's what we do at CAD Micro. We're your partners. We'll work with you to find the best solution for you.
Awesome. Great job, Angus. Thanks for taking us through your tips there. Super helpful. I'm sure that a lot of people will be taking advantage of those for sure. So, just quickly, I know we're getting short on time here. Before we get to the Q&A, if you have any questions, just to Angus's point, if you have any questions, you need some support, feel free to reach out to our support at CAD Micro. Give us a call. Whatever works best. If you have any questions about any type of licensing or options that you have available to you, definitely reach out to us as well, sales@cadmicro.com. Again, we're here to help, and we want to, make sure that you guys are able to, leverage the tools to your best of your capabilities. So I guess unless anyone else has anything to add to that, we're going to jump into our Q&A session here.
Performance evaluation tool. Great tool. We're going to talk. We had any questions come in?
Yeah, so thank you both. That was awesome. We do have a few questions from the audience that I'm going to start with. One question for you, Angus, is are there any specific graphic card requirements for the enhanced graphics mode?
That's a great question. Yes, it does require using a certified graphics card. So if you're on one of the non-certified cards, there is a chance that it's not going to work. So in order to see that enhancement, make sure that you're on a certified graphics card. You can find that if you go to the RX tool, it'll actually help you find the certified graphics cards. There's going to be a link right there. Otherwise, reach out to us, reach out to your account manager, or reach out to our support team, and we can help you figure out if your card is certified. And if it's not, we can help you pick a card that will be certified and will also fit to your needs.
Awesome. The second question I have here is, can the detailing mode be made the default when opening the file?
Unfortunately, no. That's a great question, and I think that would be a great enhancement request. At this time, there is no way to make it your default mode. You still have to go in and use the more complicated open dialog. I know what you're thinking there. You want to just make it the default for everyone at your organization, but we don't have the ability to do that yet.
Awesome. The next question here is, do you have these large assembly performance tips in a handout? And we can definitely provide that for you.
Yeah, we can definitely put a handout together. You're also all going to get a recording of this webinar so that you can relive it as many times as you want.
The next question I have here for you is, what is the most recent certified graphics driver? What if the most recent certified graphics driver is older than the most recent graphics driver? Is there any disadvantage to being on the most up-to-date driver?
Yeah, I think I understand what you're asking. That's a really good question. If your graphics driver, it's often that the most recent certified driver will not be the newest driver available for your card. And in that situation, running on the newest driver is not what I would recommend. I would always recommend using the certified driver by SOLIDWORKS. Your RX tool can really help you find that out. Our support team is also really adept at that kind of thing. But yeah, don't necessarily say, you don't need to be on the cutting edge. You just need to be the best that SOLIDWORKS tells you to use, because that's going to always maximize your performance.
Awesome. Next question here is, what do I do if I need high image quality for screenshots of my SOLIDWORKS assemblies?
So, okay, you're in that situation where you can't necessarily run at 10% image quality. In that situation, one of the I've seen people do two things. Number one, you can just ramp it up when warning is going to pop up here. Ramp up that image quality, you take your screenshot, you turn it down. That's a fairly manual process. CAD Micro has a ton of experience with writing macros. That's something we could talk to you about doing, is really quickly putting a macro together so there's one button that you press on your command manager that is set image quality to maximum, set image quality to minimum, so that you can really quickly go through and do that.
Awesome. Next question I have is, if I am currently working with an older version of SOLIDWORKS and working with a large assembly, but I want to upgrade to 2021 to take advantage of these new tools, what are my options?
Well, so you do have the ability to run multiple versions of SOLIDWORKS on one computer. I don't highly recommend it. It's something that us AEs typically do because we want to be able to demo the new features, but we also want to necessarily have a really stable version of SOLIDWORKS. I typically recommend upgrading around Service Pack 3. You do have the ability to upgrade today if you want to. SOLIDWORKS 2021 is out. If there's a feature that you need right away, go ahead and upgrade. If you want to wait a little bit, you want to make sure that you're on the most stable build, the majority of that gets ironed out by Service Pack 3, which usually comes out around mid next year.
Awesome. Next question I have is, what are the minimum hardware requirements to run a SOLIDWORKS assembly?
That's a great question. We have a article actually in our resources section on our website. So Sarah, if you can maybe email that person the resources. There's a great tool that we have up there. If you need that resource, again, just get in touch with us. You're going to get a follow-up email. Definitely just respond to that and say, I would like to see this the resource. It goes through in quite a bit of detail exactly which things we recommend and why, so you can decide where to spend your money to get the best bang for your buck.
Perfect. And the last question I have here is, if I am working with slightly older hardware, can I make the upgrade to SOLIDWORKS 2021 and see the benefits of working with large assemblies, or will I need to upgrade my hardware as well to take advantage of SOLIDWORKS 2021?
That's a really good question. So with SOLIDWORKS 2021, the biggest thing that's going to cause the performance enhancements is going to be your graphics card. So if you were running a previously high-end graphics card, so I'm talking like something like a Quadro P4000 or something like that, you're going to see significant enhancements. That card has been around for a while, but it is still high-end. It's still good. If you're running something like a K model, you might not necessarily see as good graphics performance with the upgrade. It just kind of depends on which hardware you're using.
Okay, sorry, there's a few questions coming in live here, so I will just shoot those off to you. So one question we have here is, how do you share information between CAD platforms, especially with large assemblies?
Ooh, that's a great question. Pack and Go works pretty well if you don't have PDM, but really the best solution is to have a PDM system in place. And if you have PDM, you can loop people into your PDM system, and it understands. SOLIDWORKS PDM completely understands all the file references, everything you need, and it makes sure that you're always working local. You're never pulling from the network drive. That it always makes sure that the files are local to your system so that they work as fast as possible. If PDM is not an option for your company, maybe you don't have the investment up front, maybe it's not going to fit your needs, there's actually a great new tool called the 3D Experience Platform, which allows cloud-based PDM. And it's out of the box, it's really simple, it's just all handled through a user subscription. I'm really excited about it. I know Mike is really excited about it. Definitely reach out to your account manager if that's something you need, because it's a super cool tool, and it is the future of SOLIDWORKS, is essentially what we're getting now.
Awesome. We have another question. How do you import step files such that they are small and do not affect large assemblies?
That's a good question as well.
2021 and see the benefits of working with large assemblies, or will I need to?
Enhancements is going to be your graphics card. Some tips and tricks here, but I would recommend just reaching out to our support team. I will often import step files, delete any appearances, make sure that they're fixed, do that all separately. And I'll do this as kind of a multi-stage process. So import them once on their own, make sure that they don't have any faulty faces, everything is fixed, get rid of any appearances, combine bodies where possible, delete little things wherever possible. Then I'll often export them as like a Parasolid file, because SOLIDWORKS works on the Parasolid kernel, so it actually works much faster on that. I'll export as a Parasolid and then re-import it one more time, and that's often where I'll find that it's working the best. If this is something you're running into though, definitely reach out to our support team. That's something we can help with.
Okay, and I have one last question for you, Angus. How to share information between different engineering firms collaborating on a project and using different 3D software?
3D interconnect. That's one of the greatest things about SOLIDWORKS 2021. It came out, I want to say in SOLIDWORKS 2017. With 3D interconnect, you guys can work natively on different SOLIDWORKS files. So if you want to be doing the same design work, someone else is using CATIA and you're using SOLIDWORKS, that's going to be a little bit tricky. You can't necessarily edit the same files together. In those situations, that's going to be hard. But if there's the situation where someone is designing a component that's going to go into your assembly and they're designing it in CATIA or Pro-E or something else, that's where 3D interconnect comes in. Make sure you have it turned on under your import options, because it's going to allow you to maintain that link back to that original data. And it brings it in without translation. It brings it in and reads it natively. I hope that that's answered your question. I know that I gave you one thing that doesn't work and one thing that does, but yeah, that's the best way to do it.
Okay, awesome. So we have gone over time here. So I think that's all the time we have for today. Once again, thank you to Angus and Mike for such a great presentation. And thank you everyone who joined us for our session here today. We hope to see you again at some of our other sessions. As mentioned, check out our website, www.cadmicro.com, to see the remaining sessions we have this week. And don't forget to keep an eye out for the survey for a chance to win some prizes for you and your team. Thanks, everyone.
Yes. Thanks, everyone. Check out our socials.
Have a good day.